Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the After the Timeout podcast, sponsored by the IBCA. We are a global podcast that shares the passion for the coaching profession. You will hear the stories of coaches from all around the world. We are covering the profession in game, outside of the game, and anything in between. As always, thank you for listening. We look forward to sharing the coaches' stories with you.
On today's episode of the After the Timeout podcast, we have a great guest, Jerrel Oliver, head boys basketball coach, Hyde Park Academy. Coach, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
We're doing well. It's a chilly day here in Chicago.
Oh yeah.
Fall starting to set in, so we gotta get back used to it, right?
Yeah.
So we start every episode with the opening tip, just to get to know you a little bit, kind of your journey to how you got where you are, your program, so our listeners can have a little bit of background before we kind of get into some of the details. So you could just give us a little bit about your path and your program. I'm sure our listeners would love to know.
Yeah. So I would say about 12, 14 years ago, I was an athlete. I was playing. I had just finished. I had played junior college basketball. I had started off at Black Hawk East Community College, and then I went on to Malcolm X College, and then I had went on to Chicago State University. And at the time, the coach was Matthew Muhammad. And I remember one day I was in Jules. I was in Dominic's before they changed the name on it, and I was lifting like a case of pops, like the 2 liters, and about 500 2 liters fell on me in the store, and my back just like started to just like go out on me as a 22, 21-year-old kid or whatever, well, adult. I was in there and going through some troubles, about to like join the Chicago State basketball team, and that happened. And I remember getting a call from my uncle, who was the head coach at Curie High School, Mike Oliver. And I remember him calling me saying, "Hey, I know da 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 da. Would you be interested in coaching the Derrick Rose All Stars at the time? D Rose had his travel team going for quite a minute, and it was an opportunity for me like to get into coaching at the time of me suffering like the injury, and I took on his eighth grade team, and I haven't looked back, since. So that's kind of like how I started like coaching or whatever, and then of course I started off at Curie, as like a volunteer assistant, and then of course the sophomore coach, and then everything else kind of speak for itself.
No, that's awesome. That's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah,
500 2 liters.
yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy.
That's nuts.
So we wanted to get into, you mentioned your time at Curie and you coached for your uncle, who was a Chicago legend. But as you coached for him, what were maybe some of the lessons that kind of helped prepare you to be a head coach? And do you actually think by working with your family, it helped you get a closer glimpse into what it would be like to be a head coach?
Well, I think like work. I think one of one of the biggest benefits I got, working over at Curie was that I actually, and I don't want to say this in a negative way. I got the chance to work with, a guy in his 20th at the start of like it was like the start of his 20th year. So, I got a chance to see like the maturity version, of a coach and not like maybe the younger days. So I think like a lot of the maturity that I've seen and like a lot of like, the lessons and like the stories that were shared and things like that, I think that it really, really helped me in a way, as I prepare myself like to be a head coach, because one of the things at Curie, I tell people like, Coach Mike got a saying like it's his way or the highway, and things like that, like listening to that, seeing how he instilled that discipline in the kids, and that's what the kids really really want. It really really made me look at it like different, because coming in the game as a 21-year-old, 22-year-old, I'm thinking more so the kids looking for like a friend, the kids looking for like a little brother or a big brother, And in reality, no, they're really looking for that discipline. So things like that really, really helped me, when I was like over at Kerry.
So I'm gonna follow up on that a little bit. Then you mentioned like the kids want discipline and this and that. Like, so when you were kind of watching that, right, coming in, how was that developed, right? Because it's not an easy thing, right? Like you have to kind of build that up and make those connections. So what was kind of the process to kind of get those kids to buy into that discipline? Because a lot of times it's resistance at first, right? And then helping them kind of figure out, okay, this is why we need it, and this is how it's going to benefit us, and make their lives better, help them in the school, wherever it may be.
Right. So I played at Curie too. So I played for Mike. So that was like an advantage almost being a coach. And one of the things I would say that made that like easier for the kids is that one of the things that they do at Curie, Mike kind of like hires all former players. So like his staff now, like 9 guys, 8 of them played for him. And then of course him and Larry Wallace been together for like 30 years. So the thing I would say is consistency. It's an everyday thing with them. It's not like today they're gonna like enforce discipline and tomorrow they're gonna lack up. It's an everyday discipline. Get the class on time. Do this, do this, do this, do this. Make the line, touch the line. They always talking about, discipline in a consistent manner. So I think because it was so consistent, I think the kids realized like, hey, it's either I'm gonna do this or I'm not gonna play. So I think that's what made it like easy for the kids like to buy into what they do. And when I tell you like during the season, after the season, before the season, in the middle of the season, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. So they understand like, this is just what it is. Like, and either I gotta do it or I'm not gonna play it. So I think that the consistency to the discipline, is something that made the kids really, really buy into like what took place over at, or what take place over at Kerry.
Chicago basketball, right, has a long, deep history, right? Some of the best basketball anywhere. There's more teams that are improving every year, getting better. But what are some things that you think need to continue or start to be done to keep growing the game in Chicago in a positive direction, right? A lot of times you hear, if you're going to get an article from the Sun Times or whatever, it's, well, this person transferred here or this person did this or transfer over there. But how do we continue to highlight all those positive things and continue to build those positive things in the inner city and in Chicago?
Well, it's funny you talking about this. I was just telling some people like one of my advantages as one of the up and coming coaches, I feel, is that, I got like true mentors. I think the game now have lacked so many mentors, and I think the game also have lacked like the steps it takes to become, a head coach. Nowadays, a lot of guys are just getting a job or getting opportunities just because the school want to fulfill a position. And I think that's why we see a lot of the things that take place, because when you look at transfers, when you look at like all the movement and stuff that's taking place, it's rare that you see all of this take place with a veteran coach. All of these transfers that's taking place is rookie coaches, second and third year coaches who think that, hey, I'm supposed to win every year. And they don't understand that winning every year, the greatest coaches didn't do it. But when you look at transfers now in any area, no matter where they coming from, because they coming from everywhere, it's a bunch of young people. Like you don't see this at the Curies, the Whitney Young. You don't see it at places where you got veteran leadership at. And I think that's one of the things we need to come back. Like guys getting a chance to, be under people or be under systems or people who have been through the beginning stages to help like bring our city back to what it could be, or what it should be rather. So I think that that's one of the things that we really really need to get back to, like because like growing up as a coach, I always heard like Mike Oliver talk about, oh, Luther Bedford, these guys did this, Sonny Cox, these guys did this, or you You hear the Rob Smiths talking about the Bob Hendricks did this and this. You don't hear that no more. You hear everybody talking about, oh, it's me or I did this. It's nobody helped leading these, like a lot of these coaches, and we kind of like skipping steps. And I think that's what's causing a lot of this, to somewhat chaos, in Chicago.
So I'm going to follow on that, and that's a great point. You know, coaches like John and I and you and a lot of coaches we had to kind of put in our dues, right? Like you said, you were a freshman coach and a sophomore coach, right? You got to kind of work your way up, but it takes two to tango, right? So how do I guess maybe when you as a experienced coach you're going into a job or going to try to get one of those positions, do you think you kind of communicate that message, right? Because you can say all you want, but you're not doing the hiring, right? Like you have to have the administration and those on board. So how do we kind of change that? Not that young coaches can't be successful, right? But there's a lot of things we all know when we first became head coaches we're like, oh man, you know, and by going through those trials and figuring things out, you kind of learn. So how do we kind of get that message to people who are putting those coaches in place to kind of get that consistency, like you said, and that experience?
Well, I hate to say this, but I think the message is getting sent, to these people in a way that they necessarily don't want it, because a lot of people are like, of course, like you said, you open a newspaper and now you see something about an academic scandal or this type of scandal or recruiting violation, or they doing something to this nature or that nature, so the message is being sent that, now everybody not looking at it that way, but the message is being sent that, a lot of these coaches that are facing trouble or doing anything, a lot of them skip steps. A lot of them skip steps, or they just didn't have the experience of, what it takes. So a lot of times, you got to sit down and we have to have we have to have someone that have more conversations with, like, the leaderships and, the administrations and, like, everybody, because it's like I tell people, you never see a person become a principal the first year they get their type 75. Like, it's a reason to why they say be a teacher for 6 years or this for 6 years before you can lead a school, because you got to know, like, the steps in place. And a lot of times, you know, we don't know the steps. So I think that that message is something that, you know, I don't really know how you get it across to the people. I mean, you see so many examples of, like, what's happening nowadays, and you will hope that the message do get across, but that's a good question. I don't really know how to answer that. Like, I don't know how to get that message across, you know?
I I think you said something, coach, that was brilliant, which was you don't see a principal get their first principalship after they get their type 75. I have never thought about it in such a clear way. But this kind of leads to our next topic, which is you were a sophomore head coach for 10 years, and Todd and I were both sophomore head coaches as well. And so I'm just curious, and maybe this is a good time for you to also provide some young coaches some advice. Maybe what were some things you feel like you learned in that time about yourself running a team as a head coach of your own level that kind of helped you develop? And maybe what are some things you feel like young coaches could use as some advice to help prepare them to be a head varsity coach?
Well, one of the things I think for me when I became a sophomore coach, after my first year, I had to start like Mike's, because I told him that I wanted to be a head coach one day, man. One of the things that they did with me was like they made me check grades. I was responsible for checking my student grades. They gave me coaches' contacts and said, hey, you call and learn how to schedule a game. You learn how to, manage a 31 game schedule. You learn how, to put an event together. So they put a lot of responsibility on me, just to see if I really, really wanted, what I said that I wanted. So I say that to say that you deal with that parent. Go have that conversation with that parent. Let's see how you handle it. So like for me, a lot of those things like looking at an eligibility sheet, building out our own schedule, talking to people about if we're gonna plan an event or do this or do that. So those was things that, and that was just a few things that they taught me. And then, like I tell everybody, like the other thing, like I would tell any young coach, and I was just talking to one of my mentors last night about this, is that being a sophomore coach and a varsity coach is two different levels. Being an AU coach and a high school coach is two different things. And if you don't come in with a mindset that like I don't know everything and I'm gonna be learning new things every day, you're not gonna make it in this. Like you got to like have like not necessarily a start over approach every day, but every day something different can come your way that just you wasn't prepared for or you just didn't know it was coming. So I would like that's the biggest advice that I would give to like young coaches, like don't think you know it all, you know.
So we've asked a lot of guests this lately, and we get some really great answers, and it's kind of in the same vein here. Why you chose the job at Hyde Park? What were the factors that you were wanting that job? What made it attractive to you? Kind of what you were looking for, what you saw from the outside that said, "Hey, this is a place that is a good fit for me. We can be successful. We can do a lot of great things, not only as a coach, but for your staff and the kids there."
Well, so over the course of time, I had um um other job offers. I was a finalist for like 2 3 years. I was a finalist for the Kenwood job for 2 years. And of course I didn't get it either year. And it just like I got to the point where like I took Hyde Park because so many people told me not to. I was like just being, I'm not gonna say defiant, but everywhere I turned, everybody said, don't take this job, don't take this job. Oh, they've been right there. At the time I took the Hyde Park job, they probably had 7 coaches in 8 9 years. So everybody was like, don't take this job. And I was like, I truly believe that it's not, I think it's the person. I believe that it's the person who in the job that can, set the scenery of the job. And I just thought that I was at a point in my career where I was mature enough to take a chance. My part was like the second job, in my career where I had applied for a job that was like in the top league. It was sitting in the middle, of the east side, and it had a strong history to the school. Hyde Park got a strong history to the school, so I wanted to go somewhere where basketball have always been a big deal. It had a strong history and strong alumni support, and and the area in itself, it's an amazing area and like a game changing area. So I wanted to go somewhere, where I could just be in a good situation and attract the things that I need and the people that I need, to be successful. So that's what really made me take Hyde Park um, at the time.
All right. So before we go kind of into the second half, we're going to talk about kind of the beginning of the season, right? I want to talk about that transition that we're just about to finish, right? You finish your season, then you come back and you're doing stuff in the summer, whether it's showcases, whether it's workouts and things like that. And as a coach, you kind of say you have ideas, right? Okay, this person left, this is a new person, we can do this and this and this. So kind of how are you organizing those thoughts, now to say, okay, let's look at this come tryouts to kind of compare and contrast and see when tryouts in the early season starts that maybe those ideas we thought we could do this, but we can't, or you know what I mean? Like you have ideas going into the season and sometimes they change when you get in there. So how are you kind of organizing that? What are you looking for that way from the summer and now looking to into the tryouts, right? What are you looking for in tryouts?
So from the summer, like to try out. So for me, like we look in the summers, like different teams, like we during our contact days in the summer, we normally just play. So I try to play a lot, because I was listening one day. I was listening to like a Bill Self conversation, and he talked about how like you can really, really, really evaluate your team by watching them just play so much. Playing versus doing workouts and stuff like that. So we play a lot. We play a lot, and every year, like I have these ideas. And this year I had this idea. I say, hey, we're gonna play this fast, and we're gonna play like this, and we're gonna do this and do this. And then, as you know, you have like open gyms and you see some of the players that show up to open gym. And then, of course, like getting prepared for tryouts, you realize that, I don't know, if we, going to be able to play this fast anymore because, of course, you have kids like us. We had some kids who left and things like that. So, organizing, it's hard. It's hard, man, because the biggest thing for me is like, when it comes to like organizing these ideas, it's like we go from June and like I think we had a really really good June month of June, and then we like our kids go back to like the AAU team, and you got to get back. It's like the start over. Like for me, it's like the consistent start over. So for I don't really know how to I don't even know how I would say like how I'm preparing for what's to come because I really don't. I look forward to the next 3 weeks or 4 weeks, whenever tryouts and the first official day of practice is. But that's a tough question. That's a good question, actually. That's a good question.
Well, I think that's going to build now into our next topic. So, we tried for each guest to focus on one specific topic for the second half of the show after we kind of talk about their journey. And for you, we kind of want to talk about the first 2 weeks of practice before that first game. So you have tryouts are done, cuts, teams are formed, all those things. And it's your first practice. We're just talking about the first practice. And, you come in, what's the message you're trying to convey? What are you looking to get across to your team on day one? Maybe what are some of your personal goals just for that day one practice?
For me, my first goal day one is communication, talking. That's the main thing for me. Like I want to hear everyone talking and engaged in everything that we do. So one of the things that I try to do is like we talk about communication, and of course the kids don't like running, so we use communication or run. So for my very, very first day, it's communication and defense. That's it. That's all we're gonna do for the whole first day. Talk and defend. Talk and defend. So for us, that's like the day one goal.
All right, so let's bounce that out to like the first 10, 12 days of practice, right? That's probably all you get before you got a game, right? You got, something in there. So what are like the kind of the basics, right? You have to have in defensively, offensively, whatever it may be, kind of to know you may not be completely ready, right? Because you have to put it in practice in a game, and it's a whole lot different than practicing. But what are the basics you have to have there to say, okay, you know, we're at this level and we can compete with these things we have in.
Well, the first thing is defensive principles because everybody play defensive help side and zone principles. That everybody got their own deny the ball side shooter. We'll let the ball side, don't let them drive, whatever it may be. So defensive principles is the main thing. Normally, to start off, being honest, we might have a play or two offensively, maybe a play or two in the first 2 weeks. We normally don't play Thanksgiving week, so they normally give us a third week. This year we are, but we normally defensive principles and the box out principles and things of that nature, like the basics, to prepare us for where we're going, and then we'll try, like I said, like to put in some offensive stuff because we try not to like overwhelm with everything that we do throughout the course of the season. So for us, it's like our main focus is defense and share the ball offensively with ball movement, a lot of motion offense and stuff like that. So, but the main principle and the main thing is defensive principles and ball side shooter and help side and no middle and things of that nature. So that's like our first 10 days focus.
So let's more shift off the court for the next couple of questions and talk maybe about those cultural things that you're trying to accomplish the first 2 weeks with your team. Maybe how do you build those trust relationships with your players? How do they kind of build them with each other? What are maybe some things you're doing those first couple of weeks to kind of build those relationships?
Well, one of the things I do is so for us, we talk about like no starters. And so every day we are coming to practice, you'll be with a different group. a different group. And then, like I said, we all kind of like have the same practice uniforms on and things like that. And I talk about like how we all are one, and it's hard, it's hard because, nowadays every kid in they want to be the leading scorer, so it's kind of like, we treat everything like with a competitive nature, but we also treat it not from an individual competitive nature, but from a team standpoint. So it kind of like forces them to like trust each other and understand each other and know that, you know, we got to do it together. And the other thing is that we don't let those our players like speak negative to another player. Anytime negative things come out your mouth, the whole team run. So it kind of like you might think it in your head, but you ain't gonna think it out loud. So it kind of like forces you to encourage because every time anybody say something negative, we all go run, whether you're on the other team or that team. So it kind of like kills like a lot of the negative vibes and things like that. They all, like I say, it's not easy, but those are some of the few things that we do to start off to like build like the culture. And then for us in our situation, of course, like because it's so competitive in every area nowadays. Like for us, we like the team, they gotta wear the same shoes, they gotta wear the same socks. If you got on a white compression shirt, they gotta have on white. If you got on a black, like everything is the same. The look is the same, the makeup is the same, everything is the same, but your hair. I can't control that. But you have to look exactly the same. And eventually they realize that we represent the same thing. And culturally it has been good for us. It has been good for us.
So I wanted to talk about those intangible things you mentioned, the communication, the ball movement, right? And it's all we say it, but how do you really go about kind of showing them the benefits of it, like communication, right? A lot of times you say communication, but they don't know how to communicate, right? So they're like, what does that mean, right? Especially kids today, because they don't have to communicate. They look at a phone. They maybe not into it. Like you said, they're playing on an AAU team where they're doing a completely different system, right? So what are the things you're like kind of telling them of how to communicate and maybe showing them how it looks, whether it be film or pointing out examples in practice, and then the same thing kind of maybe on offense with the ball movement of kind of positive reinforcing that idea of these are the concepts and this is why it works and this is how it's going to work well for us.
Right. So one of the things I always start off doing is I always like to get all the coaches around and I just try to show them like how like we even have to communicate as coaches, even at our level, because if I just scream sub them out or do something, I don't say a name, but if I don't communicate a name, everybody's gonna look around like what you talking about. So every drill we do, if we doing like a chest passing drill, we do a lot of basic stuff. So if you and your partner chest pass, every time you pass it, you got to say his name. Hey, Mike, Jay. So everything you do, you gotta talk and like say his name. Another thing I do is I take a lot of college highlights and films and like online stuff and share it with those guys. Like I was just sharing something with Duke and Coach Shire was just saying to the team how like this a veteran team. Like you a veteran team. You shouldn't be walking. You should be running. Like communicating like things that I see like online. Like we watch a lot of videos and stuff of that nature to communicate it over to them so that they can know that this is important. Communicating. They doing it at the highest level. And I try to get them to understand that like the value of moving the ball and being unselfish. And one of the things I always use is like next level examples. Like that's one of the things I realized that get their attention. And I tried to tell them, I say, Kentucky had 2 players this year drafted in the top 5 and neither one of them started. Like you just got to do the right thing. Like just do the right thing. It ain't got to be about who starts. So it's like examples like that I use, every single day, to try to like make those things happen.
I'm stealing the Kentucky example, by the way. All right. So all the things we talked about, the on the court things, the off the court things. now you're, well, and I'll be honest with you, I know in CPS, I'm pretty sure you're missing a couple practice days for the election, et cetera, et cetera. So, you only have so many days. You get to the end. How are you assessing your team's readiness after those first 10 days of practice to begin the games? How do you know the night before game one, you're like, okay, we're ready, or oh boy, we're not ready?
Well, I try to stay positive. I always try to, you know, say in my head we not ready because we never is. And I don't think no coach team is like where they want them to be game one. But I just try to I always try to find something positive to assess and be like, well, we do this really good or we do that really good and kind of like go from there. But for the most part, like I say, I don't think a team ever ready. Sometimes when my season end, I don't think we was ready. So I mean that's 8 months later, 6 months later. So we never ready. I actually was talking at one of these meetings not too long ago about like how I think that we should be allow like other states to have like some type of preseason play or preseason practice or 2 weeks of something like a training camp, kind of like NBA or something. Like everywhere else they doing this in other states, and we get like 2 weeks. It should be like an insult to play a game 2 weeks into like a season. Like it should be at least 4 weeks before you can probably play a game minimum. No, but you know, not much.
So I will tell you, Coach, I'm at D3. I'm at Benedictine on the women's side, and just last year we used to have the same thing, right? Show up October 15th, and you got to go practice and then go play a game. Then they gave us 8 days of practice that you can spread out. Now you got to take some off of the season, but with holidays and things like that, it's pretty easy, right? But I tell you, the difference it made is unbelievable. Just in terms of getting the group back together, starting to build some of that chemistry, some X's and O's stuff. And I personally think that's a great idea high school wise because it might eliminate some of these issues, right? And help you build relationships with your kids. Because like you said, you're in June, yeah, you're talking to your kids, but you can't do anything with them until thanks to November,
November, yeah.
and they go other places, and then somebody's saying some of this and somebody's saying some of that, and then I think it would help to continually, not only for those kids basketball wise, but socially, life wise, right? To have a mentor and have somebody's holding them accountable in those times, because there's only so much you can do when you can't really do anything with them. So I really like that idea. I mean, I think something like you said, everybody else. I'm on a different group chat with some coaches all over the country, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we got this after school, and we got 45 minutes a day, and this and that." And it's like, man, things you could do if you had that, right?
It'd be way better.
All right, so we're gonna go into our last two segments here. We call this one 30-second timeout. It's your dime, your dance floor. You can get up on your soapbox, talk about something you feel important, your family, your program. You want something you want listeners to know about. You want to flip something on us, you can flip a question on us. Whatever you want to talk about for this very loose 30 seconds, right? Don't have to worry about the second horn. Get out, coach. Get out, coach. It's all you.
Well, it's funny. The one thing I really want the listeners to hear, and especially my listeners and anybody else, I want the listeners and parents and families to listen to. Like, I think a lot of us coaches, we care about the kids. Like I don't think that none of us have like hidden agendas or things of that nature. And I just wish that like we can go back to the days and times where like coaches can like really be coaches and we can really enjoy, being coaches and having fun. I think like nowadays, with everybody with the like self-centered mindset, it have actually like killed the joy and spirit of the game of basketball, and it's not as fun as it once was. So if I can say anything, I just ask that the people allow coaches to be coaches and have fun, like because at the end of the day, like it's very few that make it to the NBA. I think I was at the Chris Paul camp, and they were saying that it's 6,000 high school kids playing basketball every year in every city, state, and it's only 6,000 basketball players in the history of the NBA ever been drafted, because it's only 60 picks for the last 60 years. You know, it's like it's only been 6,000 people ever drafted, and it's been 6 billion people ever played. So like, enjoy it. Enjoy, what you can get out of this. So that's the one thing I would say. Like, I just want to see like people allow coaches to like coach and know that it's not nothing personal or intentional, and everything we're trying to do is like to push your child like to the next level.
The ultimate dream. We always finish with a segment we call quick hitters. As Todd likes to say, this is kind of where the wheels fall off. These are just quick hitting, fun questions. I'll be honest with you, the majority of them have nothing to do with basketball at all. It's just our way to have fun with a guest at the end of our episode. So we will start off with your toughest road gym to coach in.
The toughest road gym to coach in for me, Kenwood. Kenwood, small gym to capacity, and you only can get 10 fans in because they take all of the seats before you get there, and you always get a show. Kenwood by far the toughest road gym, and it's 5 minutes away from our school, so it's the toughest road gym for us to like go inside of and play.
All right, your favorite underrated NBA player of all time? Maybe not a superstar, but underrated.
Favorite underrated. That's a good one.
Or it could just be someone you really, really, really like that maybe wasn't, like the Jordan or Kevin Durant or LeBron or whatever.
Scottie Pippen. Scottie Pippen. He's like, I think you put Scottie on the other 40 teams, and I think you're talking about possibly a top 10 player ever. He was definitely one of my favorite players that I think that got, of course, overshadowed by Michael Jordan because he was the greatest. So yeah, Scottie Pippen.
All right, so this is going to be a funny one, I'm sure, because Todd and I have asked this many times to longtime AAU coaches. What do you got for a funny AAU coaching story? That could be the outfit of the other coach. That could be some goofy game. That could be a referee story. What do you got for us?
That's a good one. I got a lot of stories. The funniest thing ever is one night we was in Vegas with the AAU team. It was funny, but at the same time, it wasn't funny. One night we was in Vegas in the AAU team, and it was a long night. I think we had just got done playing Jalen Green, and he wore us out. I got home. We had a talk. Everybody went to their room. I went to, of course, the bathroom and started running the water in the tub. And I woke up at 8 o'clock in the morning, and guess what? The water was still running all over the place. It was like water everywhere. It was almost up to the bed that I was in. I was like an hour away from drowning, killing myself. Jalen Green did that much damage to us. So I thought that was a funny one right there. I was like, all night, I didn't hear the people in the hallway. Nobody came to the room. It was just like crazy. It was like water everywhere, just everywhere.
All right, this is probably the toughest question you'll have all day. Triangle or square pizza?
Square, and I like the square pizza at Jets. Jets pizza, good.
There you go.
The little Detroit style?
Yeah.
All right, so you're picking out an outfit. This could be anything, coach. This could be if you want to go Armani, if you want to go Nike, if you want to do some Kohl's brand. What's your favorite clothing brand to wear? You're getting dressed, you want to be comfortable. What are you wearing?
My favorite clothing brand is Target. And I like to wear Target pants that I always get trimmed to be like flooded pants. I love to wear like flooded pants on the sideline.
All right, similar to your AU, but a good story from your sophomore days as sophomore head coach days in CPS. I'm sure that's just as interesting as some of the AAU stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I got a lot of good stories. I mean, like now that I'm over it, I would say that like I remember like I was playing. I mean, I played in like the most interesting thing I think for me, like when I was a sophomore coach, was that I played in 4 city championships back to back, and I lost all of them. And at the time it wasn't funny, but now I sit back and I laugh because I was like a little immature. But I mean, the funniest thing is like probably me going at a referee and the referee don't tech me and he come right back at me. I got so many of these stories like with CPS that it's like I don't even know where to start. But yeah, I would probably say that.
Coach Oliver, we really appreciate it. I knew after I sat at a coach's roundtable with you, I knew you would be a phenomenal guest. I knew our listeners would get a lot out of it. So thanks you for jumping on with us. And I know this will be one that our listeners really get into.
I appreciate you all.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the After the Timeout podcast in partnership with the IBCA. Please be sure to rate us on whatever platform you are listening and give us a 5-star rating. For more show content and updates, please follow us on Twitter at After the Timeout. As always, thank you for listening. Tune in next time for more content on the court, off the court, and anything in between.